thank you all for coming out again. We appreciate your sticking around. Follow with the Chamber of Commerce here in Pasadena, and I want to thank our payroll company, HigherUp, for volunteering. We had a couple of inquiries from some members about sick leave law that's going into effect on July 1. And in fact, we had an email from the person that takes care of our payroll with all of the things you need to do. And this was like a week ago. And I really want to thank you for doing this on so short notice, because you're you, I guess. But anyway, I'm gonna shut up in a second. I want to introduce Dr. Carlyle Rogers. He's a human resource compliance and employment law expert with 25 years of multi-state international corporate consulting and PPO experience. So he is with HigherUp, and their contact information with his information is here. As I said, HigherUp, we're on. HigherUp does our payroll for us, which we really appreciate. They do a great job. Wonderful customer service. I can say honestly, and no mistakes. And very nimble when I make mistakes. We appreciate it. But anyway, I'm just going to turn over to Dr. Rogers, and he is going to explain the ins and outs of the new California paid sick leave law, which takes effect in about a week.
Thanks so much. Yes, it does. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming and sticking it out. I know you've been here at least the previous session. How many sessions were there?
You're number 2.
Okay, so not too bad. Not too bad. All right. Well, as you know, again, July 1st is kind of the kickoff date for the biggest part of paid sick leave. Well, first of all, quick question. Who in here has not heard about paid sick leave law? Okay, that's good. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're really going to do a 10,000-foot view of what is required, kind of the ins and outs of it. Not so much the historical value of it and how we got here, but really, what do you really need to know today, July 1st, and going forward? So, come on in. So again, we're going to do an overview really quick. We're going to talk about who's covered, when it can be used, because it's very important. Real quick question, who in here has ever heard of the KidCare law? HR, I was hoping for 2 hands. No, KidCare law, okay, that's good though, because it won't be confusing. I'll tell you a little about that in a second. It's not so important if you don't know what it is. The benefit methods, in other words, how do you find out how much paid sick leave you actually have to give to your employees? How do you pay it? Now this is going to be the fun part. If you don't fall out from the first part, this is where you're going to fall out and not be very excited. And of course, employer obligations. What are you on the hook for? What do you need to know? What you have to be doing to be compliant? And of course, if you don't, what are those penalties? And they are already stacking up. So it's going to be an interesting next 12 months. Now, by the way, as we go through here, if you have any questions, you don't have to wait until the end. Please do ask. I don't like anybody to ever forget. And if it's on your mind, it's probably like everybody else's. So please do ask. So employers and employees covered. Well, just about everybody in California is on the hook here. If you're an employer, whether you are based in California or not, and you have at least one employee in the state of California who works at least 30 days in the year, you're covered. It applies to full-time, part-time, temporary. When I say temporary, it can mean 2 things, and it includes both. Sometimes employers will hire somebody on a temporary basis, not from a staffing agency or something like that. That's the obvious one. If you lease them from a staffing agency, you are also responsible for their paid sick leave as the employer. Even though you are not the employer of record, whoever is leasing them is responsible for that paid sick leave if they work for you at least 30 days during the year. Okay, exempt and non-exempt employees includes both of these. So if you're paid by the hour, or kind of that connotation of salary where they're not entitled to overtime, both of those are included as well. So as you see, it's just about everybody. Now, there are a few exceptions. Anybody have any union employees? Okay, so far all your employees are on the hook. What about anybody have an airline? Part of an airline has flight crew, flight deck. Okay, in-home health services. Okay, well those are the 3. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do know a lot of clients.
Okay, oh, so you have clients that have that. Okay, so those, they might be exempt from that. It's not a guarantee, but these are the three potential exemptions from the law. Okay, so why can a person use paid sick leave hours? Pretty simple. For theirs or a family member. And this is where the kin care law comes in. Now, the kin care law defines family members on a much smaller scale. The paid sick leave says, well, first of all, you have to be able to use it for very simple things, routine. I'm going to get immunizations, my flu shot, I'm going to do my annual physical. You know, it might be an existing healthcare condition. It might be I woke up sick, I have a cold, I have the flu, whatever it may be. Or, if you're aware of this, you know, some employers are liable for this based on the employee count. If you have somebody who's a victim of domestic violence, stalking, okay, or sexual assault. Now, this is particularly in California. You may or may not be subject to it, but again, if you have somebody who goes out to work, whether you are responsible for providing that leave of absence, they still have to be able to use the paid sick leave hours for this. So family members, again, very, very expansive. Pretty much covers just about everybody. Your children, whether it's biological, step adopted, whatever it may be. Parents, kind of the reciprocal of that. You know, your step parents, your biological parents, even if they, you know, you're a ward of the state, things like that. Your spouse, a registered domestic partner. Grandparents, grandchildren, and siblings. So as you see, it is very, very broad. So if any employee takes time off for somebody else that fits into this, it qualifies under paid sick leave. Okay, the state gave two options when determining how to give paid sick leave hours. Does anybody know what those are right off the top? You have what's called the accrual, which a lot of people, if you have vacation or PTO plans, you need to accrue it. And you also have what's called the lump sum grant method. We're going to refer to it as grant. All right, so what's the difference? How does it work? Well, if you elect to use the accrual method, the way it works is you have to allow them to accrue 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours they work. If you use the grant method, you pay it all up front. Okay, so July 1st, the existing employees will get their grant, and then every July 1st after that, they get the new grant. We're going to talk a little more about the ins and outs of that as well. So the minimum days, so if you use the accrual method, you have to allow your employees to accrue no less than 48 hours of paid sick leave per year. Okay. On the grant method, again, this is the upfront, day one, you have to allow them to grant them no less than 24 hours of paid sick leave. That's kind of interesting. You say, well, it gets crazy. It gets crazy. Now, with accrual, just like your vacation and PTO plans, you know, here in the state of California, 99.99% of the time, unless you have an ERISA trust, it has to carry over, or unless you pay it out, it has to carry over, it has to accrue to a certain amount, maximum caps. Well, the same thing with the accrual under the paid sick leave. You have to allow it to accrue and carry over to the next year. The grant method is different. You grant it on this date, and if I have 24 hours come June 30th, I lose those on July 1st, and I get another 24, or whatever your grant is, but no less than 24. Okay, so one of them is use it or lose it, which is kind of interesting for state California. The other is it carries over just like any other PTO or vacation type of plan.
So can I ask a question?
Please do.
So when you front load it,
Yes.
there's an advantage to that then?
Yes and no, it depends. Advantages that I see and that I recommend, if you have a very static, low attrition type of workforce that works full time, grant method is great. If you have, grant is the 24 and 3 days where you just give it, you front load it, yes. You front load it. If you have a transitory type, high turnover, a lot of part-timers, less than, around 10, 15 hours a week, accrual might be the better option. Yes, sir.
Can you, if you have both part-time and full-time, can you do
Yes.
either one depending
Absolutely.
on which? Okay.
And that's a great question. You can actually distinguish, if you want to distinguish groups within your organization, you can do that. And yes.
So the employer chooses it, or the employee chooses it?
The employer chooses. Yes, I know, that's the first time I've heard that, but that's a good question. So, but yes, if you have different groups, and I see that probably about 25% of the time right now, I'm seeing people say, okay, well, my full-timers are gonna get this, my part-timers are gonna get this. And those typically, again, and you'll understand here in a second with the hours, why, even if you have somebody at 20 hours per year, they're still gonna earn over 4 days per year. So it might make sense to front load it. So, and I have the numbers here in a second, it'll make more sense. Now, unlike PTO and vacation, it's not compensatory from the perspective of payout at termination. With vacation PTO, you have to pay that out if it's unused and accrued. Paid sick leave, if they have any at the end of the employment relationship, you do not have to pay it out. Now, the only thing you do need to know about termination is under the accrual method. If the person leaves the company and comes back within 1 year, 12 months, and they had accrued unused paid sick leave hours, they have to be reinstated, whatever that was. Now, when you're using the hours calculation for accrual, oftentimes, how many people have exempt employees? Typically work over 40 hours a week, right? Kind of the expectation. Well, when you're doing the calculation, you can only use 40 of those hours per week in the calculation if you use the accrual. So even if a person works 60 hours in a week, an exempt employee works 60 hours, they're only going to get credit for 1 hour because only 40 of those count. Remember, you have to work 30 hours to get that 1 hour of paid sick leave. Now, those 10 that are left carry over to the next week. And so now they, now they have, at the end of 40, they have 50 now that are remaining. So now they're almost getting 2 more hours, but it's only 1 more hour. And then the next week, then it'll all balance out. Oh, I know. This isn't even the worst part. This is the best part so far. This is the fun part. Now, if you have exempt employees who work less than 40 hours, I don't see that very often. First of all, kind of one of those things I always like to throw this in. If you have an exempt employee who works, let's say, 30 hours a week, it doesn't mean you can prorate their salary. Well, I guess you can, as long as it's no less than the 37,440, which is 2 times the minimum wage by 2080. So even if you only have them working 30 hours a week, you still have to pay them based on an entire year, based on 40 hours a week. So again, to the point though, if they work less than 40 hours a week, then all you have to do is calculate the hours they work. You can't bump it up to 40. All right, so this is where the numbers come in. If you didn't put a cap on it, the average work year is about 2080 hours, right? Which is, when you divide that by 30 hours, it's 69.33, or just a little over 8.5 days, roughly 8.5 days that they could earn if you didn't put a cap on it. If you said, you know what, 48, we're going to throw it out the window, you can earn as much as you want. That's about the maximum that somebody could earn in a year. At 20 hours a week, as you still see, a part-time employee is still going to get roughly about 4.25 days. So this is why I say, when it's less than 15 hours a week, you have somebody that is regularly scheduled less than 15 hours a week, then you might want to use the accrual because it will become under the 3 hours, especially if it's transient, people are turning over all the time. And again, just as a reminder, if you accrue, no less than 48. If you grant, no less than 24. Yes, ma'am.
So for the restaurant or hospitality industry, that would be best to do the accrual because it's such a high turnover.
And that's one of the places that I see it the most. The ones in that quarter that are doing that, give or take, that's where it is usually. And again, the ones that have less than 15 hours a week, they're not scheduling a whole lot.
But for the exempt employees, you could switch that. You could do the part-timers at accrual and
Yes.
the exempt employees at
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so how it works? Well, there are 3 magic numbers: 1, 30, and 90. 1, that's the first day you either have to grant or start accruing. So when a person, July 1st, the obvious is everybody who works for you now either gets their grant or starts accruing on July 1st. Anybody who's hired after that, on their first day of employment, either gets their grant or they start accruing. 30, that's the number that the state, put into the law that reads, after 30 days, they can use their paid sick leave hours that they've either accrued or been granted, unless an employer drafts a policy in which they can actually prohibit the use until after working 90 days. So it's important to make sure you have that policy to be able to implement that 90 days. If you don't, and you get challenged on it, it'll be very, very difficult to most likely defend it. Hasn't been tested yet, but I wouldn't want to be the one to be tested. So again, first day of employment, they get the grant or start accruing. After 30 days, if you don't have the policy, they can start using it. And the 30-day number is also important because in order to be eligible for it, remember an employee has to work for the employer for at least 30 days during the year. Anybody have out-of-state employees? Do they ever come into California and work? Even if they're an out-of-state, let's say you have an employee that works predominantly in Texas, but they spend 45 days working in California, you actually have to provide them the paid sick leave, even though they're a Texas employee, but they just come and work in the state. If they work in the state at least 30 days, even if they are an out-of-state employee, they have to be paid the paid sick leave.
When you say 30 days, it's cumulative 30 days, right?
You're right, over the course of a year, correct. Correct.
But what about the law in Texas?
Texas doesn't have a paid sick leave law. No, oh, it's Texas where they are? Good news is I'm from Texas. They don't have a paid sick leave law, so you don't have to apply it to them in Texas. Texas is pretty much, most of their laws are under federal law, so you don't have a whole lot of separate laws.
But, so just have to watch out 30 days later.
Exactly.
A lot of work.
And it is. But once you get into your payroll, what your payroll processor, that's one of the things, and that's why we've been going crazy, just trying to get this program for everybody, making sure that we got everybody's rules. So once you get that into your system, you should be able to program it in there, and then whenever something happens, it should automatically take care of it, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but the payroll doesn't come out of California, payroll coming out of Texas.
The good thing is that most payroll providers, or they should, if they don't, you want to make sure that the payroll provider actually does program that. If they don't, then there might be time to find a new one. Okay, and the other thing too, who has a policy to where if somebody's going to take time off, let's say if you're sick, you have a written policy, give as much advance or give as much notice as possible, and you have to do a written notice. Well, under the law, a person merely has to tell you that either they took it or they're going to take it. They don't have to do it in writing.
What do you mean they took it? Like they could after the fact say, oh, by the way, I did finish it.
Yeah, yesterday when I was out, I was sick.
So they could no call, no show, and then turn it in after?
Absolutely. Here's
What call no show policy?
well, no call, no show. Now, here's two things to distinguish here. The no call, no show part of it. Without a call, if you have a policy that reads that if you're not going to be in or you're going to be tardy, that you have to call, that part of it is okay. But as far as them having to prove that they took that time off, unless you have a policy that any employee who's out for a day for sick has to provide a doctor's note, which isn't very practical. You can't even require a doctor's note. You have to take it at face value. Now, the no call part of it can be subject to discipline. Absolutely. But make sure it's in
Not
policy.
payment.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because in all the companies we have handbook, it says very clear, no show, no call, that would be.
Absolutely. And again,
Handbook says very clear.
there's a couple things that you always want to keep on the peripheral with those. Kind of stepping out just a little on policy and law. Those are good policies, and then those are actionable. Obviously, if somebody doesn't call, if you have a policy. But one thing you want to make sure is that you're always open that if it was some kind of event that prohibited them from making that phone call, keeping that open. So even in your policy, you want to have that extra little statement that, unless otherwise, you couldn't do it, you're incapacitated. If I in a horrible auto accident, I don't show and I don't call. But again, it's good to have that in the policy, help it stand if you get into litigation. So it's good to have that. But those policies will stand, but you just can't require them to bring in a doctor's note above and beyond. You can discipline them though for the no call.
So, talking about the policy, since this one is effective July 1st, so all the company gonna do the amendment of the handbook.
Yes.
They have to insert this thing.
Oh, it gets better. How many employees do you have? How many?
A different client has different, numbers.
Oh, there's gonna be some fun stuff here. Oh yeah.
It is really.
As I tell you, this is the fun part. Yes, sir.
So going back to policies, if the policy for a certain company has, the employees are part-time, so they work like 6 hours, 4 hours a day. The policy says that under the new law, can they just take 2 hours sick time?
Yes, yes.
1 hour, whatever they
2
want.
hours. No less than 2. Yes, 2 hours. Now, you can request still in your policy, you don't have to change it about, as much advance notice. In other words, if it's a surgery or something that's pre-scheduled, you can still have that in the policy, but the point is, if they come to you and they don't give you notice, you can't do anything about it. And the why, is right now, and again, it's untested. Right. It's untested. So again, there's a really, really heavy emphasis on the retaliation part of this. Yes.
So would you not really explain that the policy is not calling given that last day of notice?
Well, not calling. What you want to do in a situation, not calling. If your standard policy is if somebody is a no call, no show, and you terminate them on that first show, then the answer is you should be okay to survive it. And you'll still have to pay them at the regular rate of pay, which we're going to talk about. But again, you're not terminating them because they use their paid sick leave, but because of the no call, no show. So you have to distinguish them.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to do this. Sit when they notice that you're up.
And that's one of the really cruddy things as well. One of the additional cruddy things about the law is that you can't challenge it. Now, if they don't, even if they call in, if I sleep in, I call in and say I'm sick, unless you have a policy that reads that, you're out sick one day, you have to bring a doctor's note, which again isn't practical because most people don't go to the doctor one day, then, you have to take it at face value. Now, I'm hoping it will get revised over time, but right now, as it's written, that's the way the law stands.
One day, what if they get too bad?
Well, again, if you don't hear from them, and they can't bring something in and says, hey, I was unable to because I was dying somewhere, and your policy reads that no call, no show after 2 no call, no shows, then again, it has nothing to do with paid sick leave, it's the no call piece of the show. Right. So it's not the no show, it's the no call. So you just have to make sure you distinguish that determination. Great question. All right, who in here has a PTO plan? Or an unlimited plan? Have you seen the new one? You see it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you need to read it, it's in the workflow.
I read the thing that there was a new law.
Okay, good.
I work for HigherUp, so that's why
I just sent it out there. All right, so anyway, so if you have a PTO plans historically have combined everything, paid, sick leave, vacation, personal days, things like that, floating holidays. Well, if you have that type of plan, you would think that, well, gosh, if I'm already offering 10 days that you can use for whatever you want, it should be okay. Well, the answer is no. You have to actually align it with the law. So if you, let's say, for instance, you offer 10 days of paid sick leave, and you decide, okay, well, I'm going to grant, I'm going to use the grant method, so July 1st, 3 of those days get granted, the remaining 7 can accrue however you accrue. But those first 3, and they have to be distinguished, so those, let's say somebody wasn't sick ever, and they used all 10 days for vacation, now they only have 7 they can use for vacation. 3 of those have to be used for paid sick leave. They have to be distinguished, and they have to be. We're going to talk about another piece of this on the pay stub. The requirement there, it has to be reflected as much. So even if you have an unlimited plan or you have a PTO plan, you have to distinguish paid sick leave according to either the accrual. The accrual is even worse because if you have 10 days, what's the minimum? 6 days, 48 hours. So 48 of those hours become paid sick leave. And so all they have is 4 days for vacation. That's assuming you give them 10 days. Yes?
Isn't this new law, can corporation change the handbook before there was when? But then July 1st, they changed to the P, can they do that?
Yeah, here's the thing about it. That's a great question. I've had a lot of people ask this question. You can make those changes in your handbook mid-year. Well, hopefully, assuming you have a clause in the beginning of your handbook which reads that you could do that, which is important.
Right.
If you do, absolutely you can do that. Now, the one thing you have to keep in mind is any paid time off that they've earned or accrued, they can't lose it.
Sure.
So as long as it's retained, there's no loss, you can absolutely do that. Absolutely. I've seen some people say, well, I'm just going to pay it out and get it done. Or, or some things like that. That's what I've been seeing with it. Or also just incorporating over the first year, it just kind of phase out, and then after another year, it should balance out. Give or take.
It is on July 1st, a lot of people are taking vacation, like all the HR departments of my employee understand what's going on. I mean,
Right.
when we deliver those things, they need to sign, and nobody, right there.
And that's the important thing too, is that making sure to distinguish vacation from paid sick leave. Because a lot of companies have vacation policies, but no sick leave. Or maybe they have, no sick leave for part-timers, or certain types of employees. So again, you wanna make sure you distinguish the two. And even if you have a PTO plan, I was on a call for about 30, 40 minutes trying to explain that, you have to be careful about the use of the word PTO, and when you're referring to sick leave, because those become two different things. PTO is compensatory, sick leave is not. Okay, we just talked about the impact. All right, we got three slides ahead. Okay, so paying sick leave. Who knows what the regular rate of pay is in California, or how to calculate regular rate of pay? Who has exempt or non-exempt employees, hourly employees? Do any of those employees earn commissions or bonuses? Now, when you calculate out their overtime rates, do you include that in? In other words, if let's say I work 45 hours this week, and I earn $10 an hour, and I earned $500 in commission.
On top of your.
Right, for this week. Because I do sales, inside sales.
Oh, inside sales.
Sure. So, when you calculate that for overtime, there's a thing called the regular rate, it also applies to that. You have to, for that week, and what you do is you take all the hours, all the compensation, and you divide one by the other. So that $10 an hour just became $17 to $20 an hour, and that's what you have to pay him at the overtime rate. Plus, then you have to take that 1.5, so that's $30 an hour. Yeah,
Yes.
see, I'm gonna show you an example of that in a second. But go ahead, sorry.
That applies to
No, tips no. Great question.
Is that for both exempt and non-exempt?
Yes, and I tell you, if you have, anybody who gets annual bonuses that are tied to some kind of performance or things like that, that percentage, maybe like 20 or 30% of salary, that's gonna be included too. It's really, really expensive, and I'm gonna show you examples both ways. But anyway, you have to use what's called a regular rate of pay. And again, if the person isn't subject to any kind of commissions or non-discriminatory, non-discretionary bonuses, no incentives, even per diems. You can split per diem when they travel. It has to be included in regular rate of pay. Yeah, pretty crazy. Anything, you give non-cash incentives, it has to be given cash value, you can include it as well. Now, a lot of people don't realize that, and I'm working with a client right now that just came on board, and they just went through about they ended up settling for about $120,000, $130,000 because of something like this with overtime. So it's very expensive.
So companies like yours are giving a lot of new clients, doesn't it, I'm sure?
Well, a lot of them, it's kind of a combination, but a lot of them, they pick up on it, and, we're very diligent out there. We offer a lot of things like free webinars and stuff, so people pick up on it really fast, and unfortunately, sometimes after they get, trouble and then it's catching up. But yeah, this is one of the things that's really kind of jumped up. So again, what's important is that it's non-discretionary. I mean, if it's discretionary, it's not included, but anything that's non-discretionary, any kind of compensation or incentive has to be added in. Now, some of the exceptions though, overtime premiums. Overtime premiums aren't included. Thank goodness. Let's see what else. Holiday pay. If the person doesn't work, it's per hours worked. So if you give them a holiday incentive or the vacation incentive, you're paying for vacation, that's not included. But if they work the hours, whatever they earn in that time has to be included. Yes.
In our case, the commission is on a big ticket item. Somebody being sick probably has the same number of cells in a month. I mean, being sick 1 or 2 days wouldn't affect them. If they were sick 3 weeks, then maybe.
Right.
But you still have to build that in.
Absolutely.
So they'd actually get paid more if they were sick.
Yes, and I'm going to show you exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so to calculate it, use the 90 days before. So kind of to that point, see this is where that kind of takes that into account. So if I take it July 1st, and I take 8 hours, I have to go 90 days back, and it's 90 calendar days. okay? And so any, the number of hours I worked in there. Sorry?
Here.
Oh. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
So number of hours by total comp, I'm sorry, total comp by number of hours. Total compensation during that period divided by total hours. All right, and again, all non-discretionary compensation, bonuses, incentives, per diems, whatever like spiffs. You do those types of things because they're tied to something. Yes.
How about value of automobile or meals?
No, unless if it's a reimbursement for an employee expense, which under California that's different because that's a statutory thing right there. If it's when you travel, I'm going to give you an extra $50 per diem, and if you use it for whatever, yes, that's included. But if it's reimbursing, the answer is
Or like a restaurant, if you're feeding your employees?
no. No, that would. You know what? Sadly, that probably would be included, but somebody going after that would be very difficult. They've really hammered this down to the very small denominator. Again, when you're calculating here, during that 90 days period, you can only use 40 hours a week. So even if they work 700 hours during the 90 days, it's 12 weeks roughly, 480 hours all you can apply. Okay, so timing of the payment. Well, let me kind of go through here real quick. So let's say, let's use a good example. And we'll start with that $10 an hour. So you have somebody makes $10 an hour. In the 90 hours, they work 100 hours, and they earn 500 in commission. Okay? Over that 90 days period. And they take 8 hours of paid sick leave. So what you would do, obviously, $10 an hour times 100 hours worked gives you 1,000. Add the 500 in commission. So now you have 1,500. That's what they earn. That's the total amount of compensation. Now you divide that by 100 hours. And so your regular rate of pay is $15 an hour. So when you pay those 8 paid sick leave hours, you don't pay them at $10 an hour, you have to pay them at $15 an hour. Now, when you pay them, you have to pay it within no later than the next cycle. So you have to make sure, absolutely, you have to make sure you're right on top of it. And there are some penalties, we're going to talk about those at the end. All right, so going back, here we go. So again, using that example, I use 900 there, it goes up to 1900, because you think over the course of 3 months, see how quickly that goes up with commission employees? Wow, it's great for the employee, not so great for the employer. Okay? That's the big sticker. So here's a great example here. This is your exempt employee. So let's say they earn $52,000 a year, which is $25 an hour. Okay, $1,000 a week. During the 90 days, they worked 514 hours, and they were paid annual performance bonus of $12,000. So when you look at the calculation, the actual salary part of it was $12,850 plus the $12,000. Now you divide that by the 514 hours. The regular rate of pay now is $48.35. So as you see, especially come fiscal or end of calendar years, you better hope that for the first 90 days, nobody takes any kind of time off or sick leave.
Somebody that's smart on this, can just hold off and wait until that period.
Absolutely.
And hopefully somebody in this position wouldn't do something like that for a while.
So you're saying the annual bonus only is calculated in the first 90 days?
Well, it's only, remember, it's a look back period for the calculation. So
Right.
90 days later, so if you get out to, to 91 and you paid it 91 days ago, you're off the hook.
Then you can drop the bonus.
Exactly.
So that's not calculated annually.
No. It's
Even
strictly
though
the
it's
90
paid
days
annually.
period. It had to be earned or received in that 90 days period. Now with overtime calculations, by the way, it's done on a weekly basis. So if you pay on a bi-weekly basis, for instance, with the regular rate of pay, 1 week maybe at one rate, next week at another rate. So in other words, if I earn X commission this week and another commission or none the next week, my rate's gonna be different. So you have to have that built in for your calculations.
And you have to do it 90 days. It's not, you could pick an annual.
I wish, I know,
Okay,
no, you have
has
to
to
do
be
the preceding 90 days for the paid sick leave.
Payroll is calculating a different
Yes.
rate every single time.
Exactly. If people have varying compensation,
Yes.
that's not discretionary, then yes, it's going to be all over the map.
Doesn't new software already come out doing this?
No, I mean, what we've been doing, we've been programming it into the system. So, I mean, that's about the best that you can do right now. There's no real software that does this. You just have to be able to have the rates in there. And to know, and again, another thing that's gonna be very important is you're gonna have to distinguish, because if you have, bonus as a line item, I don't know if it's discretionary or non-discretionary when you're processing it. So you're gonna wanna make sure your payroll processor, your provider, knows to distinguish that. For instance, a lot of people have or discretionary bonus plans, and it has to be truly discretionary, where nobody has any expectations. We hope we're gonna get it. Doesn't matter if the company does well, maybe we get it, maybe we don't. If it doesn't do well, maybe we get it, maybe we don't. That's discretionary. Those don't get included. So if you have one of those plans and your payroll processor just thinks, well, they're throw that in the calculation to be proactive, you're gonna have to go back and reverse that. So you wanna make sure, I've got my information, you can look it up, but if you just get our information, I can send it to you. I'll just send it to you. As well as the LSC NTE, Notice to Employees. Has anybody done their Notice to Employees yet? There's a 2-page form, which every employee has to receive. Has a lot of information on it before July 1st. And then every person that gets hired. So you want to make sure you have this going out to everybody as well. By July 1st, you have to start the accrual of the granting. Pay stubs have to reflect the amount of available paid sick leave that a person has on each pay statement. And you have to maintain the records for no less than 3 years. How much was accrued or granted, how much was used, how much following that. And you have to have it readily available, because if the DLSC comes in, or your employee comes in and says, hey, I wouldn't have this information, you have to produce it. If you don't, there's penalties come along with it. Some other things we talked about, you brought up about the policy. You need to draft that leave policy. It needs to be very clear. Update the handbooks. You can do it as an addendum. If you haven't updated your handbook this year, there were some changes anyway. If you haven't done it in a couple years, you definitely need to do it. Follow up the payroll and time and attendance processor to make sure you have all of this taken care of, all the rules. Non-discrimination. We talked about this. You are prohibited from retaliating or denying the right or not paying them for it. I don't believe you were sick. Well, we're going to talk about how expensive that can be real fast. Okay? So if you discharge, terminate, suspend, do anything that's got an adverse or negative effect on somebody, if you've been in HR or you've dealt with these things, anything that's adverse, retaliation, discrimination. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you don't put your postings up, first of all, $100 per offense. Paid sick leave withheld. This is where it gets really fun. The equivalent, multiplied by 3. So how much did you owe me times 3, or $250, whichever is the greater. Now, there is an aggregate limit of $4,000. So if you do this to a lot of employees, the good news is, on that one, you only get hit with $4,000 for that part of it. There's more at the bottom. The state makes sure they didn't put a limit on theirs. Failure to provide the written notice when you're paying them, if you don't have it on, the handbook, on the paycheck, $50 per day per offense, to a maximum of $4,000. So don't go 3 months without doing that. You have 50 employees, you get that $4,000 really fast. And of course, the state gets their share, no maximum, up to $50 per day or part of per violation. So again, this can get really expensive real fast. Now this doesn't even include if they've got an attorney they're bringing in, they're going for everything else. Okay, I know that was really quick going through a lot of information. Again, we're going to have our information, give access to the files. You can see the download. I know you guys are going to be posting something about this online as well. So the material is going to be readily available. You can listen to it again, things like that. You can always ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer those. in the short term, any questions?
You want me to hand out those,
Sure,
that
please.
information?
And here's some more information as well. We've got some cards on the payroll side, and then here's some more cards too. Okay, good, good, good. Sure. So, yeah, so we have a couple different things. Obviously, payrolling and HR technology. So if you deal with HRIS, those types of things, we offer that. We have our payroll systems, which of course, obviously, we're very much on top of this. And we also have our HR and compliance, which I head up that particular unit. And so we handle everything from outsourcing HR to I go and litigate as well. So yes, just take my card if you want a copy of it. I'll direct you directly to it. You could actually go to HigherUpHR.com. By the way, if you go to this website right here, HigherUpHR.com, you can go to there's webinars. And you can see my previous webinars. We have a free webinar series every 2 weeks. And the materials are all there. So you pull down everything. Yes. Yes. Sure.
This is the first one. And then we need to, I think it's just enough.
Well, if they say if they say it is after July 1st, they have those paid sick leave hours.
Well, I asked.
Yeah, pay them paid sick leave hours.
Thank you much.
Oh, well, if they work for you for at least 90 days, they're already there. All right. Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
I think we're gonna do that. Right now, we are you going to execute?
No, if they've already worked for 90 days, they're already eligible. Absolutely. Great question.
I don't even need it.
No.
So they're doing,
Anybody have any employees up in San Francisco? I just finished working with the client there. San Francisco has their own laws, and neither the state's new law nor theirs would preempted the other. Actually had to create a hybrid, which was crazy. Yes. If they have to truly be on call, where in other words they can't be anywhere else, then yes, there is on call.
I certainly want to see,
I think
you have some points or highlights
Yeah.
that I didn't know.
So, or the time that they're required, actually, I think it's the time that they're required to be on call.
Okay.
The reporting pay is half of that's the 4 hours or 2 hours, half of what their average shift is.
Okay.
That would be the reporting pay. I think if there's, I have to stand by the phone, I can't go and enjoy my day. In other words, I can't go to Disney today, then I have to pay for that time.
Nice.
So there's a difference between reporting and on-call time. Yes?
I'm just curious on the logic of having the accrual of 1 hour per 30, but then only, you could have a minimum policy of only 3 days a year. Why do you allow them to accrue so much more than the state would allow an employer to pay out?
How long you been in California? Your answer.
Is that the answer?
No, I've scratched my head the same way and asked the same question of why do that? And I
You
think
think they match?
you would think.
Yeah.
But and I don't know the logic. Unfortunately, that wasn't addressed because I actually go into the legislation and read the legislation as well and all the comments, and not all of it is addressed.
Okay.
So a lot of unanswered questions right now.
And don't you think there's gonna be a lot of things that come out afterwards to
I think there's going
correct
to
some of
be,
this?
it's gonna be a bloodbath of litigation for next year.
Yeah.
I think that timing on it with the Iskarian case, anybody have arbitration agreements? When was the last time it was drafted?
20 years ago.
They won't stand. There's a major case, and this is important for this because with class actions, Iskarian was a big case, it finally gets settled in the last year. All the interpretations are pretty much out, and so you need to redraft it. It's still consistent with Armendez, the old case back in the early 2000s, but Iskarian really put some really interesting things on it. these be mutual, it's gotta be separate, I mean, it's really kind of crazy, and, it took me a while to draft it. So we don't even know if it'll stand because, the state's pretty much almost rejecting arbitration all the time. It's getting more and more difficult.
I know you mentioned several things that if you haven't updated your employment handbook, what are some of the other ones that?
Who has a policy that you can't, an employee can't have copies or, review anything that's not signed?
Say that again?
Let's say if I want to give you a copy of my employee personnel file, how many of you have a policy that they can only see or receive things that they've actually signed? That's a pretty common one, and up until 2 years ago, that was okay, but now you pretty much have to provide them everything, even investigation notes. So, things like that, a lot of leaves to a couple leave laws.
What if it's kept separate?
Which thing?
The investigation.
You have to provide the personnel file, personnel records.
But I mean, if it's kept separate from the personnel.
It's still personnel file.
That's still personnel.
I know, it's good thought though, good thought. You can redact, the only thing you can do that is you can redact, names of non-management, but you have to leave management names in there. It's the only thing you can do with it. Yeah. So there's some new leave laws in the last couple of years, bone marrow donation, organ donation. Some of them were expanded on. Obviously you want to make sure that you have all your leave laws in place based on how many employees you have and how that defined. Yeah, there've been quite a few things depending on how far you go back. The website, if you go there, the 2014, 2015 laws are all on there. You can find any resources. So, absolutely. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Paul, I
Oh,
appreciate it.
you're welcome. It was partly your email.
Yeah.
And HigherUp, our payroll company.
Yeah.
And our payroll specialist, whatever her title is, emailed me something within an hour of your asking
yeah?
about it. A whole big long list of these are the things you have to do. And I thought, you know what, I'm not sure I know what I'm supposed to do. And a lot of people ask, so I'm glad.
Yeah.
It's on my.
Thank you again for coming out. PCC Small Business Development Center made the space available and really facilitated this for us. They're in business to help small businesses do any number of things. Advice, counseling, hook you up like we do, hook you up with other companies that can support you and all that. So if you have any need of anything, they're a really good resource to have. So, only as a HigherUp, they do a great job for us, and thank you for coming out. And I guess if you have questions,